Hello everyone, myself Krishna Prasad, Assistant Professor, Department of Mechanical Engineering, MIT Mysore. Welcome you all for the lecture session on the module 3 that is called IC engine, refrigeration and air conditioning system. In today's class, we are discussing about the internal combustion engine and contents regarding to the today's class. It is called introduction, heat engine, classification of an heat engine, then parts of an IC engine and terminologies. So, very first thing we need to understand before going to the internal combustion engine, it is called what is meant by the heat engine. So, heat engine is a device which is used to convert chemical energy of the fuel into heat energy. By utilizing this heat energy in order to perform useful mechanical work in the form of the rotation of the shaft, that is called as the heat engine. So, we all know that what is meant by the fuel. So, fuel is a substance which contains carbon and hydrogen as the main combustible element. On burning with oxygen in the presence of atmospheric air, this produces the heat energy. So, this heat energy is utilized to perform useful mechanical work in the form of rotation of the shaft, that is called as the heat engine. So, the heat engine is further divided into two types. The one it is called external combustion engine, other one it is called internal combustion engine. So, what basis the heat engines are divided into external combustion engine and internal combustion engine, it is very much important. So, very simple, if the combustion of the fuel takes place inside the engine cylinder, then it is called as the external combustion engine. Similarly, if the combustion of the fuel takes place inside the engine cylinder, then it is called as the internal combustion engine. So, what are the main parts of the internal combustion engine? That is called, very much important thing, it is called as the cylinder, piston, connecting rod, crank and the crankshaft. Okay. So, observe here, in case of the external combustion engine, here combustion of the fuel takes place outside the engine cylinder, and in case of the external combustion engine, coal or steam generated from the boiling of water, it is mainly used as a fuel. Observe here, in this figure, here water is used to generate the steam and coal is used as a fuel. So, after burning the coal, so water is get converted into the steam. Here these burnt gases are passes through the tube and then it is enters into the engine cylinder. So, in the engine cylinder, these burnt gases are expands and exerts the large force on the movable component called piston. So, that means here the motion from the piston is transferred to the crankshaft through the intermediate mechanisms called connecting rod and the crank. So, once the rotation of the crankshaft is achieved, then it is used to run the various parts of the vehicle. So, this is regarding to the external combustion engine. I repeat, what is meant by the external combustion engine? In case of the external combustion engine, here combustion of the fuel takes place outside the engine cylinder and here coal is used as a fuel. So, whenever coal is burnt, this heat energy produced, it is used to convert the water into the steam. So, whatever the steam produced, it is having the high amount of energy. This heat energy, it is then enters into the inside the engine cylinder, then these burnt gases are expands and exerts the large force on the movable component called piston, and this piston is reciprocates inside the engine cylinder and the motion from the piston is going to transfer to the crankshaft through the intermediate mechanisms called connecting rod and the crank. So, this is regarding to the external combustion engine. So, one of the example regarding to the external combustion engine, it is called as the steam engine. Okay. So, next second one, it is called internal combustion engine. So, what is meant by the internal combustion engine? In case of the internal combustion engine, here combustion of the fuel takes place inside the engine cylinder. So, the parts are the remain same. In case of the internal combustion engine, it contains the cylinder, piston, crank, connecting rod and the crankshaft. But in case of the internal combustion engine, two more extra parts, it is called inlet valve, exhaust valve as well as the igniter. Okay. So, what happens in case of the internal combustion engine? So, in case of the internal combustion engine, the air fuel mixtures are going to enter into the engine cylinder through the inlet valve. So, after burning with the help of the igniter, hence the burnt gases are going to produce. These burnt gases are expands and exerts the large force on the movable component called piston. So, then the motion from the piston is transferred to the crankshaft through these intermediate mechanisms like connecting rod and the crank. So, this is regarding to the internal combustion engine. So, major difference in case of the external combustion engine, internal combustion engine is called, here combustion of the fuel takes place inside the engine cylinder. So, what is the main advantage in case of the internal combustion engine compared to the external combustion engine? So, here combustion of the fuel takes place outside the engine cylinder and these hot gases are passes through the tube, then it is enters into the engine cylinder. So, whenever these hot gases passes through the tube, so some of the gases will go into loses its tendency or heating tendency. That's why we are moving on to the internal combustion engine. Here in case of the internal combustion engine, complete combustion of the fuel takes place inside the engine cylinder itself. Therefore, whatever the heat energy developed, it is completely exerts on the piston. Then the motion of the piston is transferred to the crankshaft through the connecting rod as well as the crank. So this is regarding to the internal combustion engine, and the internal combustion engine, it is popularly known as the IC engine. Okay, so what are the main advantages regarding to the internal combustion engine? So internal combustion engine, it is light in weight, high mechanical efficiency, good compactness, then it is also used for portable application and low cost compared to the external combustion engine. So where internal combustion engines are used? So internal combustion engines are used in the automobile, aircraft applications. So this is regarding to the internal combustion engine. Next, we are moving on to the detailed classification of internal combustion engine. Okay, so in the detailed classification, so very first we need to study, it is called it as based on the thermodynamic cycle. So here thermo means heat and dynamic means the movement. So how heat will going to transfer from one place to the another, or based on the thermodynamic cycle of operation. So IC engines are first classified into three types. So first one, it is called Otto cycle. So what is meant by the Otto cycle? Here combustion of the fuel takes place inside the engine cylinder at a constant volume, then it is called as the Otto cycle. So we all know that in case of the internal combustion engine, generally happens 4-stroke engines like suction stroke, compression stroke, power stroke and exhaust stroke. So during the power stroke, so fuel is going to burn and power is going to develop, and the combustion of the fuel takes place at the constant volume, then it is called as the Otto cycle. Then second one, what is meant by the diesel cycle? Here the combustion of the fuel takes place at a constant pressure, then it is called as the diesel cycle. So Otto cycles are generally happens in case of the petrol engine vehicles, and the diesel cycle generally happens in case of the diesel engine vehicles. Then dual cycle. So what is meant by the dual cycle? Here combustion of the fuel takes place both at a constant volume and a constant pressure. That means first combustion of the fuel takes place at a constant volume, later combustion of the fuel is also takes place at the constant pressure. So this is regarding to the classification of IC engine based on the thermodynamic cycle. Then second one, based on number of strokes per cycle. Okay, so there are two types. One it is called 4-stroke engine, other one it is called 2-stroke engine. So what is meant by the 4-stroke engine? Here working cycle completed in the IC engine with a 4 different strokes. So 4 different strokes like suction stroke, compression stroke, power stroke and exhaust stroke. So what happens in case of the suction stroke? In case of the suction stroke, air petrol mixture is enters into the engine cylinder. Then compression stroke. So in the compression stroke, so air fuel mixture is going to compress us to very high pressure and temperature. So in the power stroke, so air fuel mixture is going to burn, hence high power is going to develop. Then in the exhaust stroke, the burnt gases are going to expel out through the exhaust wall. So this is regarding to the 4-stroke engine. So examples of the 4-stroke engines like bike, car, truck and tippers. This is all coming under the 4-stroke engine. Then 2-stroke engine. In case of the 2-stroke engine, here working cycle completed in only 2 strokes. The one it is called upward stroke, other one it is called downward stroke. So generally 2-stroke engines we can see in the vehicles like TVS XL, RX and diesel generators, where we are going to use the 2-stroke engines. Next one, based on the type of fuel used. Based on the type of fuel used, internal combustion engines are classified into 4 types. First one it is called petrol engine. So here fuel used in case of the engine, if it is petrol, then it is called as the petrol engine. So petrol engine vehicles we seen generally in the road. Then diesel engine, here in the IC engine, if the fuel used is diesel, then it is called as the diesel engine. Then gasoline engine, if the fuel used in the internal combustion engine, it is the natural gas or the biogas, then it is called as the gasoline engine. Next, fourth one, biofuel engine. So here if the fuel used is a mixture of 2 fuels, then it is called as the biofuel engines. Okay. Next, fourth one, based on the method of ignition. Okay. So already told, so in case of the power stroke, the fuel is going to burn and power is going to develop with the help of the igniter. So what is meant by the igniter? So igniter is used to ignite the fuel or it is going to completely burn the air fuel mixture inside the engine cylinder. Then whatever the power developed is going to transfer from the piston to the crankshaft. So ignition of the fuel can be occurs in two ways. One, it is called spark ignition engine. So spark ignition engine generally we are going to observe in case of the petrol engine. So in case of the spark ignition engine, here ignition of the fuel is occur with the help of the spark plug. Then it is called as the spark ignition engine. Second one, compression ignition engine. So here fuel is ignited as the fuel comes in contact with hot compressed air. So then it is called compression ignition engine. So in case of the spark ignition engine, the igniter used it is called it as the spark plug, and in case of the compression ignition engine, igniter used it is nothing but fuel injector. Next one, based on the position of the cylinder. Based on the position of the cylinder also, IC engines are broadly classified into four types. Next, first one, it is called vertical. So vertical position of the cylinder generally we can see in the bike as well as the car. Then horizontal position of the cylinder. So in case of the horizontal position of the cylinder, cylinders are placed horizontally. So one of the best example we can see in applications like the company called Subaru. So the lead engine is placed horizontal position in order to obtain the perfect balance. So next one, V engine. So here the cylinders are placed at an angle of 120 degrees. So V engines can generally we can see in Formula 1 cars. Next, radial engine. So radial engine generally we can see in the aircraft engine. So here the complete 360 degree we can mount the cylinders around 8, 10 or 12 number of cylinders can be placed. So then based on the number of cylinder. So the number of cylinder it is called, one it is called single cylinder engine, other one it is called multi-cylinder engine. So single cylinder engine generally we can observe in case of the bike, and the multi-cylinder engine generally we can observe from car, truck, tipper. And the last one, based on the method of cooling. So based on the method of cooling, it can be categorized into two types. The one it is called air cooling, other one it is called water cooling. So air cooling means we can see here generally in case of the bike we can see the air cooling system. So in case of the air cooling system, the fins are attached to the engine cylinder. So whatever the heat developed due to the combustion of the fuel, it should be dissipated into the atmosphere. So this can be done with the help of the fins. The fins are going to increases the surface contact area with respect to the atmosphere, so that heat can be easily dissipated into the atmosphere. So air cooling systems are generally we can see where scarcity of the water is occurs. So then second one it is called water cooling system. So water cooling system can be generally we can use in the car system. So where it is one of the most important phenomena in case of the automobile. So water coolings are generally we can done with the help of the radiator. So this is regarding to the classification of IC engine. I repeat, so classification of IC engine can be done with a 7 different way. So first one it is called based on the thermodynamic cycle. Here Otto cycle means here combustion of the fuel takes place at a constant volume. Diesel cycle, combustion of the fuel takes place at a constant pressure. Dual cycle, here combustion of the fuel takes place both at a constant pressure and constant volume. Then based on the number of strokes per cycle, that is called 4-stroke engine and 2-stroke engine. Then based on the type of fuel used, if it is used petrol, then it is called petrol engine. If it is a diesel, then it is called diesel engine. If it is gasoline or a natural gas or a biogas, then it is called as the gasoline engine. And bi-fuel engine means it is a mixture of two fuels. Then based on the method of ignition, if in case of the petrol engine vehicle spark plug used, then it is called spark ignition engine, and in case of the diesel engine your fuel injector used, then it is called compression ignition engine. Then based on the position of the cylinder we can see vertical position, horizontal position, V engine as well as the radial engine. Then based on the number of cylinders, so it is called single cylinder engine as well as the multi-cylinder engine. Then based on the method of cooling, there are two methods. The one it is called air cooling system, other one it is called water cooling system. The next topic regarding to the internal combustion engine, it is called as the main parts of an IC engine. So we already know what is meant by the IC engine. So IC engine means here combustion of the fuel takes place inside the engine cylinder. So due to the combustion, whatever the power developed because of the burnt gases is going to transfer from this piston to the crankshaft through the intermediate mechanisms like connecting rod as well as the crank. So along with these main parts, we are also having some other included parts like piston rings, inlet valve, exhaust valve, spark plug, crankcase, flywheel. These are all the very much important in case of the before going on to the working of an IC engine. Okay, so very first important part in case of the internal combustion engine, it is called it as the engine cylinder. Okay, so first of all, what is mean by the engine cylinder? So engine cylinder, it is the heart of the engine in which fuel is going to burn and power is going to develop. Okay, so that means in case of the suction stroke, the air fuel mixture is going to enters into the engine cylinder through the inlet valve, so that in case of the power stroke, so spark plug is going to ignite, hence power is going to develop. So during that, there is high amount of heat and pressure is going to develop inside the engine cylinder. So in order to withstand very high pressure and high temperature in case of the engine cylinder, and it is usually made up of grey cast iron and steel. So this is very much important thing in case of the engine cylinder. I repeat, what is meant by the engine cylinder? So engine cylinder is the heart of the engine in which fuel is going to burn and power is going to develop. So during the combustion of the fuel, very high pressure and high temperature is going to develop inside the engine cylinder. In order to withstand this high pressure and temperature, so engine cylinder, it is usually made up of grey cast iron or steel. So this is regarding to the first part of an IC engine, it is called it as the cylinder. Okay, so how cylinder it looks like? So this is called it as the outer casing of the engine or housing of the engine, and this part it is regarding to the engine cylinder. So inside this engine cylinder, fuel is going to burn and power is going to develop. So next, second part, what is mean by the piston? So what is mean by the piston? So piston, it is nothing but it is reciprocates inside the engine cylinder. Okay, so piston is going to reciprocate inside the engine cylinder, and the construction of the piston is also very much important. So the piston is a cylindrical shaped component which perfectly fits inside the engine cylinder. That means outer diameter of the piston must be exactly equal to the inner diameter of the engine cylinder. And what is the main function of the piston? Here the piston is going to compress the charge. So charge is nothing but it is a mixture of air and fuel in case of the petrol engine. Okay, it compresses the charge, and power developed due to the combustion of the fuel, it is going to transfer from this piston to the crankshaft through these intermediate mechanisms like connecting rod as well as the crank. So this is main thing regarding to the piston. Okay, so I repeat, what is mean by the piston? So piston, it is nothing but it is reciprocates inside the engine cylinder. Piston is the cylindrical shaped component which perfectly fits inside the engine cylinder, and it compresses the charge, and power developed by the combustion of the fuel is going to transfer from the piston to the crankshaft through the help of the crank and the connecting rod. So this is regarding to the piston. So what is the main function of the piston? The main function of the piston, it is nothing but it is going to transfer reciprocating motion of the piston into the rotary motion of the crankshaft. So this is main thing regarding to the piston. So next, third one, what is mean by the piston rings? So there are two types of rings are available in case of the piston rings. The one, it is called compression ring. So that means these two, it is called it as the compression ring, and this one, it is called it as the oil ring. So what is the main function of the piston rings? These piston rings are the metallic rings are inserted into the circumferential grooves provided at the top end of the piston. Observe here, in case of the piston, 3 grooves are provided, and the first 2 grooves are contain the compression ring, and the third groove it is contains the oil ring. So first, what is the main function of the compression ring? So compression ring, it maintains a gas tight joint between the piston as well as the cylinder. That means which does not going to allow the burnt gases from the combustion chamber into the crankcase. Okay, so this is the main thing regarding to the compression ring. So if the burnt gases escape from the combustion chamber into the crankcase, then it is going to mix us with the whatever the engine oil present in the crankcase, then it will going to clog the oil line. So that's why we need to use the compression ring. Then what is mean by the oil ring? So these oil rings are going to extract the excess lubricating oil present at the engine cylinder, is going to extract and send it back to the oil sump through this oil holes provided in the piston. Observe here, these are all called it as the oil holes. Okay, so this is regarding to the piston ring. So what is meant by the piston ring? Piston rings are the metallic ring inserted into the circumferential grooves provided at the top end of the piston. There are two types of piston rings. The one, it is called metal ring, another one it is called compression ring. There are two rings. So it maintains the gas tight joint between the piston and the cylinder, and it does not going to allow the burnt gases or escapes and enters into the crankcase. Then oil ring, the main function of the oil ring is to extract the excess lubricating oil from the engine cylinder and send it back to the oil sump through oil holes provided on the piston. Next, fourth one, connecting rod. Observe here, the connecting rod forms the link between piston and the crankshaft. Okay, so connecting rod forms the link between the piston as well as the crankshaft, and this connecting rod, it is not at all having the uniform size. One end it is having the smaller end, other one it is called having the bigger end. That means here smaller end is connected to the piston with the help of the piston pin. Observe here, in the piston there is the piston bosses are available. These piston bosses are going to hold the smaller end of the connecting rod with the help of the piston pin. Then the larger end of the connecting rod, here the larger end of the connecting rod, it is connected to the crankshaft with the help of the crank. So this is regarding to the connecting rod. The main function of the connecting rod is going to convert the reciprocating motion of the piston into the rotary motion of the crankshaft. So this is main thing regarding to the connecting rod. Okay, so connecting rod, it is having the two ends. The one it is called smaller end, other one it is called the larger end. Here smaller end is connected to the piston with the help of the piston pin, and the larger end it is connected to the crankshaft with the help of the crank. So this is regarding to the connecting rod. Next, fifth one, what is a crank? Very simple, the crank, it is just a lever, it is connected to the connecting rod at one end and crankshaft at the other end. So the main function of the crank is to obtain the rotary motion to the crankshaft. Then what is mean by the crankshaft? So crankshaft is a shaft located at the flywheel. Okay, so whatever the power developed due to the combustion of the fuel is transferred from the piston to the crankshaft through the intermediate mechanism. So whatever the power obtained at the crankshaft is used to propel the vehicle or in order to drive the various other parts of the vehicle. So this is very much important regarding to the crankshaft. Okay, so this is the crankshaft. Then seventh one, valves. So valves are nothing but the poppet valves. These valves are used to allow the air fuel mixture enters into the engine cylinder as well as eliminate the exhaust gases from the engine cylinder with the help of the two types of valve. The one it is called inlet valve, other one it is called it as the exhaust valve. What is the main function of the inlet valve? The main function of the inlet valve is to allow the air fuel mixture enters into the engine cylinder with the help of the inlet valve, and exhaust valve allow the escaping of burnt gases from the engine cylinder in the exhaust stroke. And these inlet valve and exhaust valve are going to operate with the help of the camshaft. Okay, so this camshaft is going to receive the power from the crankshaft itself. So this is regarding to the valves. So there are two types of valve. The one it is called inlet valve, other one it is called it as the exhaust valve. So what is the main function of the inlet valve? So function of the inlet valve is to allow the air fuel mixture enters into the engine cylinder and exhaust escapes outing of burnt gases from the engine cylinder. So this is regarding to the inlet valve and exhaust valve. Next, eighth one, flywheel. So flywheel, it is nothing but it is a heavy wheel. So this is the flywheel. The flywheel is the heavy wheel mounted on the crankshaft of the engine, and the flywheel is going to store the energy during the power stroke and supply the same energy during the other three strokes. We know that there are four strokes of the engine. It is called suction stroke, compression stroke, power stroke and exhaust stroke. Generally combustion of the fuel is going to take place in the power stroke, and whatever the power developed by the engine is completely going to settle in the crankshaft. But the crankshaft does not having so much of energy to hold the complete combustion of the energy. So in order to withstand this, we are going to use the flywheel. So flywheel is going to store the energy during the power stroke and supply the same energy to the compression stroke, suction stroke and the exhaust stroke in order to compensate the energies. So this is regarding to the flywheel. Okay, so what is a flywheel? Flywheel is the heavy wheel mounted on the crankshaft of the engine. It absorbs the energy during the power stroke and supply the same energy during the other three strokes like suction stroke, compression stroke and exhaust stroke. Then ninth one, it is called crankcase. What is mean by the crankcase? So crankcase, it is nothing but it is the lower part of the engine. Okay, so crankcase, it is the lower part of the engine. It completely closes the crankshaft and it also acts as a sump for the lubricating oil. Okay, so this is regarding to the crankcase. I repeat, what is mean by the crankcase? So crankcase, it is the lowest part of the engine, it completely encloses the crankshaft and it also serves as the sump for the lubricating oil. So this is regarding to the crankcase. Last one, it is called it as the spark plug or fuel injector. So if the igniter used in the petrol engine, then it is called it as the spark plug, and if the igniter used in the diesel engine, it is called it as the fuel injector. So what is the main purpose of using the spark plug or a fuel injector? In order to ignite the air fuel mixture or in order to ignite the fuel in case of the combustion. So this is regarding to the spark plug and fuel injector. Okay, so I repeat, so first part it is called it as the cylinder. Cylinder, it is nothing but it is the heart of the engine in which fuel is burnt and power is going to develop. Then piston is going to reciprocate inside the engine cylinder, and it is in the shape of this cylindrical component which perfectly fits inside the engine cylinder. Then there are two types of ring, the one is called compression ring, other one it is called it as the oil ring. So compression ring is maintains the gas stage joint between the piston and the cylinder. Oil ring is going to extract the excess lubricating oil from the cylinder, send it back to the oil sump. Then connecting rod, it forms a link between the piston and the crankshaft. Then crank, it is a lever connected to the crankshaft at the one end and connecting rod at the other end. Then crankshaft, it receives the power due to the combustion of the fuel. Then next one, it is called it as the inlet valve and the exhaust valve. Then flywheel is a heavy wheel mounted on the crankshaft of the engine. It stores the energy during the power stroke and supplies the same energy during the suction, compression and exhaust stroke. Then crankcase, it closes the crankshaft of the engine, it also serves as the sump for the lubricating oil. Last one, it is called fuel injector or a spark plug, it is used to ignite the air fuel mixture or a fuel during the combustion of the fuel. So next, last one, it is called IC engine terminology. Okay. So in the IC engine terminologies, very first one, it is called it as the bore. So what is mean by the bore? So bore, it is nothing but it is the inner diameter of the engine cylinder. It is the inner diameter of the engine cylinder or the external diameter of the piston, that is called it as the bore. So the bore, it is usually denoted by small d. So this is regarding to the first IC engine terminology, bore. So bore, it is nothing but inner diameter of the engine cylinder. Second one, it is called top dead center. So what is meant by the top dead center? Here the extreme position of the piston near the cylinder head, this is called it as the top dead center. Okay, so during the suction and the power stroke, here the position of the piston, it is starting from the cylinder head, so this is called it as the top dead center. So top dead center, it is usually abbreviated as TDC. Okay, so during the working of 4-stroke petrol engine and the diesel engine, we are abbreviated directly from TDC to BDC. So instead of telling the top dead center to the bottom dead center. So this is regarding to the second terminology. Third one, it is called bottom dead center. So what is meant by the bottom dead center? It is the extreme position of the piston near the crankshaft end, it is called it as the bottom dead center. Okay, and the bottom dead center, it is usually abbreviated as BDC. Okay, next, fourth one, what is mean by the stroke length? So stroke length or stroke, it is nothing but it is the linear distance travelled by the piston when it is moved from TDC to BDC. That means linear distance travelled by the piston when it is piston moved from top dead center to the bottom dead center during the suction stroke, compression stroke, power stroke and the exhaust stroke. So that is called it as the stroke length, and the stroke length, it is usually denoted by capital L. Then fifth one, what is mean by the stroke volume? So stroke volume, it is nothing but volume covered by the piston when it is moved from top dead center to the bottom dead center. This is called it as the stroke volume, or volume of the cylinder when the piston travels from TDC to BDC position. This is called it as the stroke volume, and the stroke volume, it is usually denoted by Vs, and we know that Vs, it is nothing but area into length. So area of the cylinder, it is pi d square by 4 into L. So where D represents, it is nothing but bore diameter of the engine cylinder, and L it is nothing but the stroke length. So the product of area into length of the cylinder, it is nothing but the stroke volume. Next, very important one, it is called sixth one, clearance volume. What is mean by the clearance volume? It is, observe here it is the volume of the cylinder above the piston when the piston it is at TDC position. This is called as the clearance volume. That means even though the air fuel mixture completely enters into the engine cylinder during the suction stroke, but whatever the power developed or ignition of the fuel occurs only in this position. So this is called as the clearance volume. Okay. So clearance volume, it is nothing but volume of the cylinder above the piston when the piston it is at TDC position. This is called as the clearance volume, and the clearance volume it is usually denoted by Vc. Okay, capital V suffix C, it indicates the clearance volume. Next, seventh one, it is called the compression ratio. So compression ratio, it is defined as the ratio of total volume of the cylinder to the clearance volume. So this is called as the clearance volume. So total volume of the cylinder, it is nothing but this is the summation of the stroke volume and the clearance volume to the clearance volume. It is called as the compression ratio, and the compression ratio it is usually denoted by RC. And the last one, it is called piston speed. So piston speed, it is nothing but it is the speed of the piston when it is traveled from TDC to BDC position. It is called as the piston speed, and it is indicated by 2 ln meter per minute. Here L indicates the stroke length and N it is indicates the engine speed in revolution per minute. So this is regarding to the terminologies of IC engine. I repeat. So what is meant by the bore? The bore is called inner diameter of the engine cylinder. Top dead center, it is nothing but extreme position of the piston near the cylinder head, abbreviated as TDC. Then bottom dead center, it is called extreme position of the piston near the crankshaft end. Then it is abbreviated as BDC. Then stroke length, it is the linear distance travelled by the piston from TDC to BDC, and it is indicated by capital L. Then stroke volume, it is nothing but volume covered by the piston when it is moved from TDC to BDC position, and this is called as the Vs, and the Vs is equal to area of the cylinder and length of the cylinder. Then clearance volume, it is nothing but it is the volume of the cylinder above the piston when it is in the TDC position. Then compression ratio, it is nothing but total volume of the cylinder to the clearance volume. Then piston speed, it is nothing but average speed of the piston when it is moved from TDC to BDC position, and it is indicated by 2 ln meter per minute. L is nothing but length of the cylinder and N it is nothing but engine speed in RPM.